Understanding Fear Through Stoicism, A Path to Inner Alignment. Transforming our relationship with fear through ancient wisdom. Fear is perhaps the most universal human experience, yet it remains one of our greatest sources of suffering. While modern psychology offers various approaches to managing fear, the ancient Stoics developed a profound philosophical framework that doesn't just help us cope with fear, it transforms our entire relationship with it. This transformation leads to what the Stoics called inner alignment, a state where our thoughts, emotions, and actions flow from wisdom rather than reactivity. Chapter 1. The Stoic Understanding of Fear's True Nature. The Stoics held a revolutionary view of fear that challenges our common assumptions. Rather than seeing fear as an external force imposed upon us, they understood it as a product of our own judgments, perceptions, and beliefs. This insight fundamentally shifts how we approach fear from something that happens to us to something we participate in creating. Seneca captured this beautifully when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This observation reveals that much of our fear exists not in the present moment, but in our mental projections about future possibilities. The Stoics recognize that the real source of fear is not the world around us, but the beliefs and judgments we have about it. Consider standing at the edge of a cliff. The Stoics would argue that it's not the cliff itself that creates fear, but our perception and judgment about the possibility of falling. This distinction is crucial because it places the locus of control back within us. If fear arises from our judgments, then we have the power to examine and potentially change those judgments. The Stoics also distinguished between rational and irrational fears. Rational fear, the kind that keeps us from walking into traffic, serves a legitimate protective function. Irrational fear, however, is rooted in false judgments and misconceptions, causing unnecessary anxiety and distress. Most of our daily anxieties fall into this second category, stemming from attachments to things beyond our control. Chapter 2. The Dichotomy of Control as Liberation from Fear. Central to Stoic philosophy is the principle known as the Dichotomy of Control, which Epictetus articulated clearly. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Our opinions are up to us and our impulses, desires, aversions, in short, whatever is our own doing. This principle becomes a powerful tool for understanding and managing fear. When we examine our fears through this lens, we discover that most of them concern things outside our control: other people's opinions, future events, natural disasters, or death itself. The Stoics taught that we should focus only on what is within our control and accept what is not. This isn't passive resignation, but active wisdom, recognizing where our energy is best invested. Marcus Aurelius, himself no stranger to fear as he cried when told he would become emperor, learned to apply this principle practically. He understood that while he couldn't control the magnitude of his responsibilities or others' expectations, he could control his response to them. This realization transformed his fear from a paralyzing force into a source of clarity about what truly mattered. The dichotomy of control helps us perform what one might call fear triage, sorting our concerns into categories of what we can influence and what we cannot. This process immediately reduces anxiety, because it eliminates the exhausting attempt to control the uncontrollable while focusing our energy on areas where we actually have agency. Chapter 3. Negative Visualization as Fear's Antidote. Perhaps the most counterintuitive Stoic practice for dealing with fear is negative visualization, or Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. This practice involves deliberately imagining worst-case scenarios not to increase anxiety, but to build resilience and reduce fear's power over us. The logic behind this practice is profound. Most of our fears lose their power when we confront them directly rather than avoiding them. By regularly contemplating loss, setbacks, or even death, we accomplish several things. We prepare ourselves mentally for life's inevitable challenges, we develop gratitude for what we currently have, and we discover that we're stronger than we imagine. Negative visualization also serves as a form of exposure therapy. When we regularly imagine losing our job, our health, or our relationships, we gradually become less attached to these externals as sources of our well-being. This doesn't mean we care less about them, but rather that our sense of self and peace doesn't depend entirely on their preservation. The practice requires balance and wisdom. As the Stoics emphasized, the goal isn't to become pessimistic, but to become realistic about life's impermanence while building inner strength. When we've mentally rehearsed various challenges, we're less likely to be overwhelmed when they actually occur. Chapter 4. Reframing Fear Through Rational Judgment. The Stoic approach to fear management fundamentally involves what modern psychology calls cognitive reframing. Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb people, it is their judgment concerning them. This insight empowers us to examine our fearful thoughts and challenge their validity. When we experience fear, the Stoic response is to pause and ask, what exactly am I afraid of? Is this fear based on facts or imagination? What aspects of this situation are within my control? This rational examination often reveals that our fears are either unfounded or focused on things beyond our influence. Marcus Aurelius offered practical guidance for this process. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This reframing doesn't eliminate all fear, but transforms it from a paralyzing force into useful information about what deserves our attention and what doesn't. The Stoics also taught us to examine the stories we tell ourselves about feared outcomes. Often, we catastrophize situations, imagining not just the feared event, but all the terrible consequences that might follow. By breaking down our fears into specific, concrete concerns rather than vague anxieties, we can address them more effectively. Chapter 5. From Fear to Inner Alignment. The ultimate goal of Stoic fear management isn't simply the absence of fear, but the achievement of inner alignment, a state where our thoughts, emotions, and actions flow from wisdom rather than reactivity. This alignment occurs when we stop being controlled by external circumstances and start living from our deepest values and principles. Inner alignment means that our response to fear becomes consistent with our character rather than driven by immediate emotional reactions. When Marcus Aurelius faced the terrifying prospect of leading the Roman Empire, his alignment came from accepting his duty while focusing on how to fulfill it virtuously rather than trying to escape it. This alignment also transforms fear from an enemy into a teacher. Fear often signals that we're approaching something important, a growth opportunity, a meaningful challenge, or a values-based decision. When we're aligned with Stoic principles, we can reframe fear as a signal that we're on to something important, rather than a reason to retreat. The Stoics understood that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in the face of fear. Inner alignment gives us the stability to act according to our principles, even when we're afraid, because our actions arise from something deeper than immediate emotional comfort. Chapter 6. Practical Integration of Stoic Fear Management. Implementing. Stoic fear management requires consistent practice rather than intellectual understanding alone. The ancient Stoics were practical philosophers who developed specific exercises for daily life. Begin by practicing awareness of your fear responses. Notice when fear arises, and pause to examine it rationally. Ask yourself whether this fear concerns something within your control and whether it is based on present reality or imagined future scenarios. Develop a regular practice of negative visualization. Spend a few minutes each day imagining the loss of something you value, not to invite suffering, but to build appreciation and resilience. This practice gradually reduces our attachment to externals as sources of security. Create personal reminders of Stoic principles. Seneca's advice to not suffer until necessary can become a daily touchstone. Remember that most of our suffering occurs in imagination rather than reality, and focus your energy on present circumstances you can actually influence. Practice voluntary discomfort to build resilience. Small acts of self-denial, going without something comfortable, facing a minor fear, or accepting an uncomfortable situation, strengthen our capacity to handle larger challenges when they arise. Conclusion. The aligned life. Understanding fear through Stoicism offers more than coping strategies. It provides a path to fundamental transformation. When we recognize fear as arising from our judgments rather than external events, when we focus on what we can control rather than what we cannot, and when we build resilience through practices like negative visualization, we develop what the Stoics called ataraxia, unshakable peace of mind. This doesn't mean we become emotionless or reckless. Rather, we develop the wisdom to distinguish between rational caution and irrational anxiety, the courage to act despite fear when action serves our highest values, and the serenity to accept what we cannot change. The aligned life is one where fear becomes a compass rather than a chain, pointing us toward what matters most while no longer controlling our choices. In achieving this alignment, we discover that our greatest freedom lies not in the absence of fear, but in our response to it. Through Stoic wisdom, we transform fear from an obstacle into a teacher, from a weakness into a source of strength, and from a limitation into a pathway to our most authentic and powerful selves.